everyone. Um, I'm gonna play a newish data slash resource pack called matcha flavored. It's supposed to be for more like casual play, or like it has like a totally different progression system and like philosophy to vanilla Minecraft, which seemed really interesting to me. Where vanilla Minecraft like really incentivizes a sort of extractionist or colonialist or however you want to put it way of approaching the world and the environment and stuff. And creative lists like that this is kind of, working on maybe different way of thinking about things. And in line with this being a casual sort of thing, I do have the bonus chest on. I'm curious as to how it's going to work because I think there's not stone tools in this pack. So I don't actually know what kind of tools are going to be in the bonus chest or how that's going to change the progression, but I've been having a pretty bad migraine for the past couple of days. And so I'm just going to really be taking it easy on this one. And I hope the audio isn't too bad. I was having difficulty with DaVinci Resolve and the noise compression when I was doing test takes of this. I might, just have to do a whole... Oh, so you just don't pickaxe. Okay. I might just have to do a whole voiceover after the fact. I don't know. This is an avatar that I got a long time ago off of one of those skin sites. It used to have a rainbow face, but I changed it. I don't really like it, but I don't really have the energy to change it to something different right now. Okay, so let's make a crafting table. I think it's consistent. Whoa, is the crafting table always this color, or is it dependent on the wood type? Oh yeah, I wanted to make for my next video for it to be I really wanted it to be like a Sims video that so I've been really thinking about, with the build that I wanted to show off and the approach that I've been doing with my videos. That's really how I want to be playing. I think I want to do a completely different approach. And I think there's a sort of confused philosophy to the existing videos where it's like, is this to show off a build, or is this to show off like playthrough? And with the build itself, is it to be a cool concept, or is this to be functional gameplay? Is this something that I would be like, you totally have to play my build, it's so fun to play? Or is it just something that doesn't need to be functional but shows off a really sort of cool conceptual idea, which might require like, people call it live mode, which I always thought it was live mode. I don't know. But anyway, I guess it makes sense. Just like conceptually what my plans would do and stuff. I feel like there's a very confused sort of philosophy, and I think it's fine for those initial videos where I'm not even really accomplishing much of anything. Like the build's literally not in those videos. But anyway, so with all that stuff in mind, actually I'm redoing the whole build in a sense. And I'm still working on the build that is to be redone. And then what's probably going to happen with the new video is that I'm going to talk more about, I guess, in more detail what I'm talking about now, of sort of the confused philosophy of things and how I changed it, and what were my initial thoughts going into this build and stuff. I don't use my book. So it's cool. Okay. Yeah. Sims, what did I say? Tinder. I thought I read something about the career scene. You have to go collect grass, but this doesn't seem to be doing that. So yeah, but with the migraine being so bad, I really I have to get a bush or short grass. With the migraine being so bad, I don't think I can work on that right now, which has been really disappointing. My health has not been great in general. I haven't been able to walk. That means I really can't do my job. And they are really unsympathetic, I feel like, to what I've been going through and the difficulty in just having what I'm supposed to do to, you know, like I'm ill and I can't come in, but how to communicate that in a way that's not, bothersome for my coworkers, and keep the expectations reasonable. Where it's like, okay, yeah, this person's not coming into work, and we're aware of that, and we don't have this expectation that like, okay, this person is delegated to this task, and I'm going to do a different task on the assumption that that task is getting done. It just doesn't make sense. But if it's like too ill to come in, and I feel like a lot of blame is being put on me for how things have been communicated when I've been trying my best, and it's not like I planned to be sick. Sometimes when they talk to me about how I've communicated things, it's like, well, if you had communicated this like earlier, then we would be in this situation. And it's like, how was I supposed to know to communicate it then? Because at that point, I didn't know that I was going to be this sick. I feel like I was prudent in the sense of like, okay, I recognize I'm sick, now I'm going to be like, hey, I'm not coming in. And then, at one point, I'll say, okay, wait, this is like an issue. I have to start being like, hey, like, this isn't a matter of me. I'm not coming in today. I'm not coming in just for a while. Or I have to take leave. Or like, at what point is the situation supposed to? Are you supposed to communicate that's your understanding of the situation? And with the conditions that I've been having, these are complex neurological problems, and I'm not a doctor, and even these developments have been even outside of my wheelhouse for what I understand my own baseline to be. So, it's really scary. It's a really like an unknown territory for me. And I just really feel like my job is acting like I knew about that stuff, and that like I chose to communicate things in the inefficient way that I did. And there was recently wildfires, like not in my area, actually pretty far away, like far enough that I'm like kind of distanced from the problem. I don't know anybody that could even say like, hey, that was in, my immediate area. A lot of the people that I've talked to, their familiarity with the problem is, the smoke. It's either their neighborhood or city or whatever was just totally blanketed by the smog and stuff like that, or they're hearing about it or reading about it on the news, So I don't have much to say on it from that sort of on the ground perspective, and I really don't know the sort of emotional whatever impact to people that were, their communities or whoever's loved ones were actually in the sort of direct impact of these wildfires in the North American continent. I don't know, I feel like kind of out of touch in that regard. But the smoke, talk about, the smoke was really bad. Well, actually, I found out, I thought it was really bad because, so in the United States we have this thing called the Air Quality Index, and we have a government website we can check to see in our local area, what is the air quality and stuff like that. And I'm fortunate that those metrics can be measured for my zip code. I think that's not the case for everybody, unfortunately. But anyway, and I thought with what it was in the maroon. So there's like different color grades for the severity of the air quality. So green is good, obviously, and then it gets to yellow, maybe orange, red, and then maroon. I don't know. So maroon is the worst. Maroon is considered to be emergency conditions for the general population, which is differentiated from people that may be considered like at risk health-wise, or having a pre-existing sort of sensitivity to air pollution or particulate matter in the air. And I don't know the specifics of if I have any kind of qualifying diagnosis of something like asthma or whatever, and I don't really even understand how asthma is classified as a condition, because there was a time when I was looking this up and I saw, I don't even know if it was a paper or an article of someone being like a scientist or a doctor or some kind of professional being like, the way that asthma is conceptualized as a syndrome is inaccurate. And I was like, okay, I wasn't even aware that people were classifying it as a syndrome. So I guess there's some kind of asthma discourse that I'm not too into. But something along those lines, I don't think it'd be far-fetched to say that I have. It might honestly be connected to the migraine disorder, for all I know. But yeah, I feel like I don't even really do okay in the yellow. The yellow is pretty low threshold, it looks like. I don't know how they mathematically derive these things or the exact biology or whatever that, when you're looking at, okay, this person's lungs are getting inflamed, when do we say that that's like, oh wow, like, you need to get out of there, like whatever, right? But anyway, the place was in the maroon, by a fair margin. And then I had a friend, give me the actual numbers for what her area was, and it wasn't that far from me. And I was like, holy shit, that's like, I think it was like 3 times as bad. Or whatever the number my place was, hers was 3 times that. And I was like, oh my god, like, how do you even conceptualize that? How do you even conceptualize that? Like, once you're in the room, once it's considered an emergency situation, and then you have like these places that have it magnitudes worse. When you there's somewhere to go outside in those conditions, what is that? What is the implication of that? I don't understand any of that. So this is like not well tread territory, right? Like, this is COVID. People are saying these are unprecedented times and all that. And that I don't think that there was a precedent in our area for these conditions. But I do think that there are things that are common sense, or basic, regard for your fellow human beings, where if the air quality is in this emergency zone and it is unhealthy for the general population to be even outside, like not even laboring, doing manual labor, increasing that respiratory rate or whatever, increasing the sort of circulation that you're getting of these particulates into the lungs, making the heart work harder, all that. Even that aside, just being outside was not healthy. Then I think as an employer that you should think about who's actually essential to be outside in these conditions. Who are the people that are like, hey, I'm sorry, this work needs to get done, and so you got to be out there even though it's so bad, right? And I'm thinking maybe someone who operates like an ambulance, or maybe a hospital needs staff. And even in those cases, these people should be given the proper PPE to do their jobs without, undeniably there's a risk to their health, but like without undue risk to their health. There's a threshold in which you're like, if you don't have this, that's an unnecessary risk to your health. So you need to have this to do your job. And that was not offered to any of my coworkers, and I don't think what I do is essential. I honestly think a lot of my job is utterly pointless, and it puts a really big mental and physical strain on me. And my coworkers are all very stressed out people, and it's all pointless. It's so utterly useless. No one should have to live like this. No one should have to put their health at risk for this shit. But that's what was required of my coworkers, and that was what was expected. And no one was given PPE. And I called in and I said, I cannot go out in these conditions. They're exacerbating my respiratory condition. And so I would think that if you use common sense, if you have someone who potentially has asthma or something, and the air quality is like that, and that they're not coming into work until the air quality goes back to the baseline that they were, at the very least, because there's also, you have to consider, like, does this person need to recuperate? Because if their lungs got inflamed during this, event, this public, I think it wasn't announced as a public health emergency, which I think is just terrible, because it was one. I think children that were out during that time, like their probability for developing lifelong asthma, whatever, is probably gone up by a lot. So I would say that's a public health emergency, but as far as I'm aware, it was not announced as one in the United States. I don't know about Canada. I don't know about. I believe there may have been other wildfires in other parts of the world. I'm not super tuned in with this stuff. I know what affects me locally and a couple other places, and again, not even directly where the fires were. But requires so anyway, so you get this information, you need to recuperate, whatever. And when I did come back to work, I came back, right as the smoke cleared up, because I already felt like the pressure to because they had me. I think they had me call in every day that I had to be out, and when you have to do that, and there's no fucking repercussions for if the person that's taking your call, is you're like, hey, I'm in this department, I'm calling out sick. There's no repercussions if they are just a jerk to you, just make you feel like shit for calling out sick. And so I really didn't want to do it. I already felt horrible, like just some, head didn't feel good. And then I have to deal with that kind of thing, and you don't really have the same kind of emotional regulation to be like, what this person says is not a reflection of me. And like, that's a lot of life advice people give, where it's like, when someone says something that's insensitive, you need to view that as a reflection of them and not yourself, because like, that's them showing that they lack sensitivity, that they lack compassion. It doesn't actually reflect the value. It shouldn't be part of the value judgments that you make of yourself and the way that you evaluate yourself. But that requires emotional regulation. And if you are having something that's affecting your brain function, you don't have that. So things that people say to you really affect you. Like, you are in a vulnerable state. You're in a mentally vulnerable state. And I feel like that's sometimes really difficult thing to, I don't know, explain to people or get any kind of sympathy for, where it's like, you don't understand that because I'm so vulnerable, that I am vulnerable to these kinds of comments, that it affects me a lot more than maybe you think that it should, because you know that these things that people say are not true, that they don't reflect anything about another person or whatever. But yeah, it was very hard to call them, and then there was like miscommunication. I don't even know. They don't value having aligned communication. When I was communicating with one person, and I was like, hey, like, this is the situation. Like, I'm gonna have to be gone until the situation resolves. And they were like, okie dokie. And then the other person that got that update was like, okay, being as that may, you have to call in every single day that you're gonna be out. They also get mad at me if I call out, like, not within a specific time frame of when I'm supposed to be in. So if I call 2 hours before my shift instead of 1 hour before my shift, I've had people get snarky with me about that. So I have to be, I'm too ill to come into work, but I still have to be awake and aware, at precisely the time that I perhaps would be getting ready for work. Like, to simplify things, let's say that, right? So when I would be getting ready for work, I'm expected to be able to make a phone call. And it's frustrating. So anyway, that resolved, and then I'm like, okay, so I got an inhaler too. I told my doctor about this stuff, and it's like, yeah, I don't think I can go to work in these conditions, and I'm not feeling well. And he prescribed me an inhaler, and so I had the inhaler. I was like, the air quality's going back to green, whatever. I'm gonna go back to work, and then the leave department in my work was like, you need to do this in this paperwork, because like, I don't know the specifics of what they originally said, but they're like, you need to do this paperwork, and in order to qualify for short-term disability, your absence has to have been 7 or more days. And I said that, like, well, my absence wasn't 7 or more days, because the way that my shifts lined up for how the air quality conditions were, it was not such that I had to be out for 7 days. Like, if I had been scheduled literally every single day of the week or something, maybe, but I'm only scheduled so many days, and how many days lined up with the air quality conditions that I could not work in, right? So I was like, yeah, but I wasn't out for that long. And then so like, okay, so you have to do this different paperwork, but they also said that they be reconsidered they didn't actually indicate to me of whether or not that would mean that my absences would be considered any differently, if they would be considered sort of these extenuating circumstances or whatever. I tried talking to HR to be like, hey, like, before I move forward with trying to doing this individually, like, in an individual capacity, are you aware of any communication that you may have got, from high on, of like, hey, I know that, there is this, it's a regional, it's a national, whatever incident going on. So for all the stores and blah blah, like locale, this is a procedure for if you have an employee saying that they've got asthma and they can't come in, or they couldn't come in for this time. And he said that he wasn't aware of anything like that, and that I should just do what this leave department is telling me. So I think I tried to, but what they're asking is for me to disclose, like to get from a doctor. And mind you, my doctor's office is not a family doctor. Okay, these are, in a sense, they're specialists. There's an internal medicine office. I don't want to waste these people's time. Okay, these are people dealing with like chronically ill patients, and I respect I especially respect my primary care physician. I think he is, I don't know a word that actually sounds complimentary, because if I say competent, it kind of almost sounds like backhanded. But I respect him, and I don't want to waste his time. And I think the things that I'm being asked to for my work is just degrading and disrespectful and a waste of everybody's time. Where they asked, okay, so what are the specific air quality conditions that you are safe to work in? And I was like, why is the burden of proof of that on me? Because clearly the conditions that are safe for me to work in are the baseline conditions for this area. And when I was having a problem was during when the general population should not have been working, right? These are conditions that literally anyone would be able to have objective medical findings that are like, this person should not be doing any kind of like strenuous labor in these conditions. You don't need a pre-existing condition for it to be bad for you to be working in wildfire smoke. I don't know how to procrastinate. Like, I guess I haven't super been trying. But anyway, let's make an X. So yeah, and I have to get appointments with the doctors, which there's a time lag with doing that, and then I have to make sure it's not coinciding with the actual shifts that I'm scheduled for. And then I also had other specialist appointments that I needed to be going to, that were like already planned or were in the works or whatever. And just scheduling is so hard for me. And getting to my appointments is very hard for me. Luckily now I do have more options for transportation, but I have to schedule those in advance, and sometimes it's really hard to have the mental wherewithal to be like, okay, where is this appointment happening and all that. And I have a case manager that's supposed to help me with that stuff, but like I've had to cancel a lot of appointments with her because I'm so sick that like I can't. I've had an appointment with her where she comes over and she comes to my apartment, and she comes over and it's like, we didn't get anything. I felt like we didn't get anything done because I just couldn't focus on like what needed to be done. I guess my head was. I don't remember. I was feeling ill. I don't remember what way I was feeling ill. I was feeling ill. And I just couldn't do it. So I'm thinking. Let's make a furnace. Oh, that's cute. Okay. Yeah. So what is this? Yeah. So I got all this stuff going on, and my work is ethics, giving me this documentation, and then my leg stopped. Like I don't know how to say it. Like it just stopped working. Like it was no longer sort of supporting my weight. I had to start using a cane, and then typically my job doesn't want me to do things like start using a new. Well, I mean, I've already used a cane before. Like I've already got that cleared before, but then I was off of it, right? So I was like, okay, patient no longer needs mobility aid. I don't know, something like that probably got submitted. So I was like, well, they're gonna ask me more paperwork, being like, I need the cane. So I had to go get that paperwork, and then my condition deteriorated further. Where I was like, I can't go to work like this. Like, oh, what is this? Oh, okay. Yeah. So it deteriorated further to the point I was like, wow, even with the cane, I really don't think I can walk. And so I had to get another. I haven't had that doctor yet to be like, hey, like I can't come to work, okay? And because of this, there's a bunch of, again, I'm saying this is not a priority for them to actually align communication. So when I was like, hey, I need to know, like, you're saying, like, hey, this, I have to do this, I have to call in every single one of my shifts, like, can I be taken off the schedule so I don't have to call in every time? Because, like, as is, already twice, I just failed to wake up at the specific hour to call in, that they wouldn't get mad at me for calling in at the wrong time. And so that's gonna reflect badly on my attendance or like whatever. And I can't be clear. What was I talking about? So yeah, anyway, they're frustrated and mad at me. Even though, like, they're healthy. They get to go to work. They get to do all these things, and they are upset with whatever burden that I'm putting on them for being disabled and having difficulty communicating about it because of this. Oh shoot, I don't have that. Weather. Okay, just I don't understand. I still forget how to pick up a friend or a bush or a short cross. So I don't have it. Oh, but I have an apple. Oh. Open the health food code. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So it's like, if you're able, both in mind and body, okay, then you need to be proactive and have a store that isn't gonna be put in a bad spot, because somebody got sick. I mean, I think that's what I would do if I had mental work. If I had the majority of the time, I would set up things to be efficient and coordinated and not depending on any one person. Okay, so I don't think I know how to play matchup enough yet, so I'm just gonna play a different. I'm gonna have to look up later how to actually play. Wait, is it still matchup? Because I don't have a middle part. No, wait, well, I'm in peaceful. Okay, that's fine. Didn't I enter matchup? But so my attendance at work is really bad because I've not been considered as actually I don't know. There's told me some confusing stuff on like whether or not my absence are going to be excused. Oh shit. Yay, my bad. Because if they're not excused, like I can be fired and that would be considered just cause, because the state that I live in is an at-will employment state. But I have a union, so they have to have a reason to fire me, and attendance, like poor attendance, is one of those reasons. So they could totally fire me at this point, but they haven't yet, because I think that there is still time for me to submit FMLA paperwork, and if they don't give me that time to do that, then I guess I can sue them or something. But what I fear is going to happen is they'll like make me do all this stuff, and me go to another doctor's appointment and have all this documentation. Because I have to submit for 2 different incidents, which is the wildfire one and now this migraine stuff. Oh, sick! I didn't know you could do that. Just want to get more flowers. I don't know if it was a good idea to use the cactus like that, because I don't know how rare those are. But anyway. So yeah, for migraine now I have to submit my paperwork. If it even is a migraine, I was told I would need a lumbar puncture if I still had a migraine. I had reoccurring headaches that did not respond to over-the-counter medication. And that kind of phrasing confuses me, because is it a reoccurring headache if it kind of feels like a headache that just doesn't ever go away, but when you take painkillers you can like kind of make it go away, but like the moment that the painkillers are kind of starting to wear off, you have the headache again? Is that really having multiple headaches? I feel like, is that just the one headache? I don't know. A migraine obviously isn't just headaches. But that's really how they put it. They didn't say like if your whole body goes numb again, or if you have like difficulty speaking or difficulty chewing, or I don't know, difficulty with some kind of activity of daily living, you need to come back to the hospital. They said if you have a reoccurring headache that does not respond to over-the-counter medications, you need to get a lumbar puncture. I looked up what a lumbar puncture can diagnose. Migraine is not one of them. So, I don't know what it is. Migraine would make sense. But, you know, is somebody in the throes of some kind of brain disorder gonna have the logical mindset on the severity or the possibilities of what it is that what is wrong with their brain? I don't know. But anyway, I think my work is gonna make me do all this paperwork, and then they're gonna be like, "This paperwork's shit," or "It's too late," or "You didn't follow this procedure," and then they can fire me. And I think that's cruel. I think it's cruel what they're doing to me, whatever it is that they're doing to me. And I don't see how it benefits anybody. I don't even see how it benefits them to do like this. You know, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, frogs." Can you do anything with them? I don't have any bugs. I can feel them. Ooh, flowers. Okay, so I can only get those to the beans. What's that? Pretty much of it. Better. What was I saying? I mean, I guess I pretty much addressed every topic that I wanted to address. It was one, what am I planning to do with my Sims video? Why am I making this video? I don't know if I directly talk about that actually, but that's because there's another video that I would rather be making. I wouldn't really necessarily want to be doing this one, but with the migraine I can't really work on anything else. And honestly, I've been so bored because I can't do anything. At least I'm not sure what is safe for me to do, or what would be satisfying to do, or what would make me just just remind me of the situation I'm in and make me so frustrated. Like, I bought a crochet kit, I bought a sewing machine, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to try anything new, I don't know if I want to learn anything new, because I feel like I would not be able to react in a fulfilling, emotionally regulated manner to the frustrations that come with learning and having to acknowledge and recognize my current weaknesses in the cognitive, department. To do those things, there are a lot of projects that I'm really, really looking forward to doing, and I thought that I wouldn't be able to do because I thought that my house would be better. Because I was on the up and up, and I don't know what happened. It might be the weather, honestly. It might be a combination of weather and stress. Because this is really bad. I mean, I've had worse. I've definitely had worse neurological problems. A couple years ago, I did. But this is very strange for me. It's very disorienting. I mean, it would be even if there's the element too. I went and I read, some subreddits and stuff, and there are a lot of people with migraine that talk about how, they're like, I've had this condition for years, and every single time, it takes me by surprise. And then other people would say to them, like, hey, you need to not be so hard on yourself because you need to think about that this is a brain disorder. So once this thing is, kind of coming on, because there's different phases of migraine, and I don't totally agree with how it's conceptualized. But anyway, let's take for granted that there are phases of a migraine, and they're like, so you're in this see, I don't even know how to pronounce actually. There are things I don't know how to pronounce because I only ever see them written, and then when I go to talk about them, I'm like, oh, I've never heard someone say that word. I feel like we should have a better habit of like, nowadays you don't have to just rely on the dictionary. If you're really talking to people, you can look up the word and then have the internet. What is it called? What do you call something that's on a website? It's a dictionary that's on a website, or even in the browser. It's like a little widget, and you can have it say it for you, and you know how to pronounce it. And you know how to pronounce it in the UK. You know how to pronounce it in America, in the United States. I think those are the only two that you get for English, unless it's a long word. And then you would get whatever the original region language. I don't know. Anyway, we do that now. I do it occasionally, but not often enough. Anyway, so there's like a pro something phase before the actual migraine or the migraine or whatever starts. And it's part of it is being disoriented, right? It is just not thinking and acting right. So the right thing to do would be, I think I'm about to have a migraine. I'm gonna take some preventative steps and put in some measures that will make this process easier for me. And if it does happen, maybe I can prevent it, maybe I can set things up so if there's a win state, maybe you don't get a win state because you're gonna have a migraine anyway, but it's not as big of a loss either. It's not as agonizing, whatever. What the H? Some mud? Dirt? Mud. We're gonna do mud, then we can do dirt. Oh my god. I'll repair it if I can. Wait, that's not. What is that? What? Mangrove propagule. Okay. Whatever. Migraines. Yeah. So there's that where it's like I don't trust myself to have context for a lot of this. Like this was a thesis where that was going. But I don't know. But yeah, I've spent a lot of my time. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that much time. It's been a couple of days. I think I went to the emergency room like about 5 days ago. And how have I spent the days after that? Mostly like watching fucking YouTube shorts. I hate it. I don't like watching YouTube shorts. Or I guess, there's the moments where you can't say that. I guess because I can't say I hate every single second of it. But it's gambling. It's gambling for what keeps your attention, what actually makes you laugh, what actually makes you feel like, oh, that was interesting. I feel like you learned something, but I think you don't really, even when you learn something, retain it in a way that's actually going to be useful. You don't retain it in a way that's even good for conversation. That's the worst part. It's not even good for conversation. A lot of times I'm talking about something, they'll be like, oh, did you know that something about a topic, that I was going to talk about, it might be true. Actually, I didn't fact check it. What's the fucking point? You know? And, not every single endeavor that you do in this world has to be productive or have some, okay, because I did this, I was able to then even hold a conversation about it. There are things, that aren't really quantifiable in their sort of value, but it doesn't make sense to do that kind of equation of, not equation, what's the word? When you do that one, less than, greater than, it's not comparison, but whatever, just doesn't make sense. It's very, there's a hustle mindset stuff where every single action that you take in some way, can be said to have contributed to your goals, versus are you living your life in a way that is overall, you can say, okay, I'm fulfilled with the way that I did things, the things that were in my control. I don't feel bad about the choices I made. And YouTube Shorts is not conducive to that. YouTube Shorts is immediately after you're done, you don't feel fulfilled with what you just did. It keeps sucking me in. I've avoided TikTok, I've avoided Instagram Reels, whatever. I did have TikTok for a time, but I didn't really get the appeal, and people didn't really get the appeal of the videos I was making, or I have seen YouTube Shorts now actually that I'm like, oh, so this is what it felt like to watch the TikToks that I was making, where the production value is low, and the point of the video is unclear, to get in the headspace of this person and be like, okay, so you thought that this was worthwhile to record. It takes a little bit to even be like, okay, and you thought you would record this and upload this and people would like it? In what world would other people like this? In what way was this not so incredibly self-serving? Does this even serve you in the future? I was like, okay, so that's what my TikToks were like. So I didn't say on TikTok really, and I don't think I can't recall if I've ever. No, I did have an Instagram at one point, but I didn't really understand the point of it. Because before I had Instagram, I had Tumblr, and before I had Tumblr, I had Lilypad, and then these kind of, what I felt was that these platforms have this the post structure. There is a bit of where you're saying your thoughts, or your perspective matters, versus Instagram, which is such a visual. What I found very unoriginal about Instagram is I can't share things on Instagram in such a way that it benefits the people that I'm sharing something that they contributed to. So let's say it's a painting. Let's say someone painted something and I thought it was really cool, and with the social medias that I had familiarized myself with, what you would do when you saw something that was cool was that you would have some way of sharing it, and be able to say, I thought this was cool. I think the people that know me might think it's cool. Or Google Plus, you could download those circles, which I guess was a kind of, was downstream of Facebook, I believe, or it was an improvement on something that Facebook already had. Where you're gonna be like, okay, so I could think the people that in this circle would appreciate, what it is that I just saw, and it would be cool to just be able to look at this thing in a very streamlined way, right? That was what I thought the purpose of social media was. And Instagram doesn't really let you do that. So I uploaded some digital maybe art. I can't remember. It was so difficult to upload the art that I had made on there because I was like, okay, so this isn't even. And I used to do more sort of in the photography and the traditional sense, DSLR. And I was like, this is tedious to upload to Instagram because they really do not want you to use the website. They want you to use the app. And my father, when he had bought me a smartphone for the first time, I asked him what was the appeal of this. I couldn't understand it. Before it has become so totally ubiquitous and mandatory to have a smartphone, right? I was like, how does this contribute to my life in a meaningful way that would not be satisfied by if you feel that you need to call me an emergency, can't I just have a flip phone? And because I was like, everything that you can do on the phone, you can do on the computer. Why wouldn't I just wait to go on the computer for all this stuff? Why do I need it to have it be mobile? I didn't understand the appeal, especially too because I believe at the time I would have had a DSi. So it's like if it's video games, I have a video game console that is mobile. I don't need this device. But then I saw one of my classmates had Samsung Galaxy Note. I don't know what model it would have been back then. And I was like, oh my god, you can draw on a digital device. And I thought that was truly smartphones, but I have now found that in terms of digital art, I still only really want to use the computer. I don't know why I would ever use my phone. Very rarely do I use my phone for certain things, and they're kind of very, they're not meant to be very, aesthetic. They're, I guess, shitposty. I had to reach for a mimetic word. I really like to improve my vocabulary. Now is perhaps not the time to improve my vocabulary, but I really would like to improve my vocabulary. But yeah, that's, these things just don't really appeal to me, but YouTube Shorts is the thing that gets me, the thing that I can't escape, because I've gotten off of Tumblr. I felt that it has deviated from what I found appealing about it, and when I reckon with what I found, there's kind of a thing with when people look back on the old Twitter, old Tumblr, or the way YouTube used to be, or whatever, this imagined past of the connections that they were able to forge, and the ways in which it facilitated communication. It's interesting for me to do that, where I think about how, I think of Tumblr as it was so much better back then, right? And I think about, honestly, I use it to some pretty toxic ends. And I believe that the incentives that it had, and the sort of grip that it had on me as a child, some of it was unfortunate, some of it was my environment, it was, I think, an unavoidable set of circumstances that would have led me to this sort of retreat into the digital world, because I was so disenfranchised from, the physical one. When I think about the ways in which platforms were able to capitalize on that, I'm like, well, I don't know that I feel nostalgic for that. I don't know that I want to go back to that. much I was committed to certain things as a kid. There's like a lot of things where like I feel, it's very difficult for me to go back into creative projects. It took quite a bit of deliberation for me to record this video. To see it as worthwhile to even try at something. That's to do with my current state, but also I wasn't exactly in a great state back then too. Whatever I've got going on now, I was experiencing a form of it back then, disability-wise. But I still endeavored, and it was part of what made my life worthwhile. And I don't really have that as much anymore, that drive. But when I think about what was underlying that drive, I don't really value it. It's when people talk about you need to go back to when you were a kid and doing yada yada, and I think about the child that I was and the incentives that I felt. I don't want to go back to that. I want to do something new. I want to approach it in a new way. When I was very young, perhaps, when you're approaching the world in a very, sensory first way. But yeah, if I was making something that was typically fandom focused, and I think that, and other people have said it better, and I'm totally blanking on the sort of insights that I've absorbed, right? Again, with the retention in a way is the way that I'm really engaging with things, and thinking that I'm learning things with absorbing people's insights is really, am I retaining it in any meaningful way? Am I able to have meaningful conversations with other people? I don't know, probably not. Anyway, this fandom mindset, and that way of relating to other people, I think about the relationships that I forged on Tumblr, and it was so limiting. It was so limiting to live like that in ways that I wasn't. No, I did start to have, I think, so much of the toxicity that I presented, at least, I don't know about other people, I can't speak for other people, but I think there was a cognitive dissonance where on some level, I knew that I was being limited in having to relate to people in this way, or that this was becoming the only way I knew how to relate to people anymore. These insular, it's so weird. It's like the internet presents you with the possibility of immersing yourself in these different perspectives of whatever, but then you get the information overload, and what people want to do is when they want that safety, that security on these platforms that aren't moderated to engender that for vulnerable and marginalized people, and where they're aware for engagement, it's honestly better to make people feel unsafe, to prey on a sort of feeling of insecurity, right? And what people do in these conditions is they become ever more insular, because all differing opinions are mishmashed together into being threat vectors, or I don't know how better to say it, but everything that you are not familiar with is something that could hurt you, and it's not an entirely unreasonable conclusion considering the volume of things that you are inundated with, and that these other people are also being taught the signifiers and dog whistles of their own insular communities. And all communication becomes incredibly loaded, and people get into these fights, arguments, maybe incredibly petty, or incredibly consequential for the reputations and livelihoods and safety of the people involved. And how to avoid these conflicts is not something that is taught, and it is not intuitive, and it purposefully brought about. Like, people are just little pawns of chessboard that make number go up. Financials, yummy financial order. The more people engage with each other this way. And when I look back, I guess what I mean is, this is of course like the reason if I'm saying I left Tumblr and I'm saying all these things that I think could be not too far-fetched for someone to be like, okay, I'm making a conclusion, that, that these have somehow worsened, and this is the reason that you left. And yes, that's correct, but when I think looking back, it's not something that wasn't there before. And it's not like, had the status quo that I had, if I was leaving and I was like, oh, it used to be this way and I used to have blah blah blah, is that something that if the status quo had stayed the same, would I have not eventually had that same realization? I don't know. Like, I don't think, but I mean, more precisely, is the seeds were there, or it was already happening, or, it wasn't the exact same dynamic, but it wasn't good. What was happening? Right, and I think on some level I was aware of that. On some level I was aware that this is not how you're supposed to. This is not a healthy way to engage with the other people, real people, to reduce them to these presentations of consumer or fandom is, I think, a very consumerist entity, or it was, I think, inevitable that it would be. Where I think a lot of people still have this outdated perception of it as this sort of counterculture, sort of ability to relate to art, right? So it's like, okay, this isn't just a syndicated television show. This isn't just a run of a superhero comic book series or whatever. This is art, and we can make derivative art. We can make art that is in conversation with it, and we can relate to each other based on this art. And companies began to realize that this was something that they could market off of. This was free advertising. There was, that rocky relationship at the start, and I believe I was there for that, where companies wanted more control over that sort of thing. I don't know if it was DMCA precisely or what it was, but whereas like if you were making GIFs of a TV show, it's like, ooh, you're in trouble now. We don't want your GIFs of our TV show. That's piracy. And I think you see less of that nowadays. What you're seeing now is more like our AI has flagged your little GIF as containing nudity, or it is a exploitative video of a child or such, and you have to make a case that no, my video is innocuous, no, my video is not sort of politically dangerous, whatever. I really hate how those two have become what I really hate about how content moderation is carried out is it flattens certain incredibly serious topics, such as exploitation. And I see. I don't even know what I can say right now because I'm probably not uploading this video to YouTube because I don't think I might not be approved yet for the PeerTube instance that I've applied for. So I'm like self-censoring because I don't know what YouTube's AI is gonna flag. But anyway, so there's a violence and there's inciting hate, and there's material which contributes to very traumatic and humiliating circumstances for certain people or vulnerable groups. And all the conversations are then flattened into how they're censored and how people are on the defense for how they're not participating in those things. And then, if you want to open that discussion to be like, well, yes, when people have to defend themselves and they're not versed in these subjects, it's one thing where if I'm stating some kind of opinion and it has nothing to do with any of the topics, and then my video, my whatever gets flagged as pertaining to a very sensitive subject. And then now I'm put in the position of having to speak on that sensitive subject, or maybe I wouldn't have because it is not my place to speak on it. I've not probably educated myself on it, right? But now it pertains to me, and now I'm going to talk about it. And a lot of times when people are put in that position, I don't agree with what they have to say. I want to defend them because I feel like they're being, in a sense, persecuted and censored. But I'm like, oh, I really didn't like what you had to say on that topic. They shouldn't have been put in the position to talk about it. So maybe that is the purpose of censorship. There's, of course, I know for a fact part of it is to have self-censorship. So, for example, the way in which I am talking about the subject is, preemptively softened in anticipation of consequences, because I don't want to experience the consequences. I have seen that there are consequences, and I am preemptively adjusting my behavior in ways that maybe are not explicitly disallowed, just to err on the side of caution, right? So I do know that, but to the extent that there is a sort of, because there's also advertisers, profit, etc. And to what extent is there sort of this nefarious side of diffusing the conversation into uselessness, into creating a I don't know if overturning is the correct word for this, but into creating a sort of focus on the issue that takes away from any kind of meaningful action. How politically sort of, I don't want to say conspiratorial, but I can't think of a better word, because conspiracy and all that, it's like there's conspiracy theory and then there's literally conspiracy, in the sense of Julius Caesar was killed by his whole Senate, right? That required a coordinated attack, and then the CIA had its coordinated attack on numerous countries and peoples, right? So conspiracy does happen, but to speak on unfounded, baseless ground confidently, to say that this is conclusively what is happening, is not something that I want to do. Anyway, I was talking about fandom, right? I think I haven't figured out yet how to have heuristics for who it is I respect, for what that respect means, for how it guides my actions, for how I want to conduct myself. That is still something I am investigating, and I don't think YouTube Shorts is good for it. That is not the point I wanted to make, actually. And I think we all know that, and I think we know that I've lost the point. Is this a podcast at this point? I don't know what this is. It's not commentary. Is it useful? It might be useful to me. Is it therapeutic? Maybe that's what this is. And I really don't like therapy. I don't know what I think about the word therapeutic in the sense that psychotherapy exists and it forms the word, the definition, the connotation. I don't think therapy is therapeutic. Individually. See, I just talked about how I don't know the ways in which I want to conduct myself and yada yada. So in the ways that in my value system, I don't think therapy is therapeutic. I think therapy orients you towards certain worldviews that are just not the ones I want to have. And especially when you have a chronic illness, it's very difficult to even get these people to respect you as a dignified subject, because the worldview that therapy orients you towards is that to live disabledly, unproductively, with outside of the value system that capitalism, or maybe not even, I think it precedes capitalism perhaps, but this sort of prerogatives and whatever about illness, that you should internalize these about yourself, not to the extent that you make people uncomfortable. You should understand yourself as a less valuable person. Like, you should internalize that. You should internalize that if you don't do your best to make up for the fact that you're inherently sort of fucked, then you are not doing your best, and you should always be doing your best. And then I think what they do is that they put a bunch of caveats on this. Like, I think fundamentally that's what that system is trying to do. It's telling people, like, hey, you need to be doing better, and what better is something that serves what the status quo is right now better, right? And then they put a bunch of caveats on that when sort of different political objectives become, I don't know, unavoidable. Like, those kind of reforms are like, okay, we need to have these reforms happen, or something that is going to rock the boat more may occur. And again, that goes back to like what I was saying, like how nefariously conspiratorially do we read into things versus when these things do happen. I think Marx may have said something, I don't know if Marx said it, somebody fucking said it, about how any individual member
perhaps it was the bourgeoisie. Any individual with certain class interests doesn't necessarily have to be scheming and plotting for things to go their way. They will just en masse. Is that correct? At large? The majority of? I don't know. Will orient their behaviors toward what their incentives are. And what I think, so I guess what I'm commenting on is more so the incentives. And I don't like the idea of opening myself up to those incentives being enacted on me. But it is unfortunately something I have to live with in order to receive some of the services that I do, which are inadequate, but without which I would be suffering far more mentally. Because my system of values is at odds with what is to be expected of me. And here's my next therapy point. Very soon. And I don't really know what I'm gonna have. I'm so worried because it's a new therapist. Because my old one resigned. And, well, resigned from her position. This whole thing. But in any case, it's a new therapist, and it's like, I took so long for the first one to believe that I had a heart condition. So when I was like, yeah, I can't do X, Y, Z because this will happen. And she says, that sounds like anxiety. And I go, perhaps I'm anxious about it, and perhaps I'm about as anxious as any person would be in that scenario. And perhaps I'm more anxious. But honestly, the coping mechanism that you're telling me to enact in this situation are not going to work, because part of anxiety is the somatic, I believe the word is somatic, experience of your heart rate going up. And my heart rate goes up. That is the disorder that I have. And so there's not much I can do about the fact that I will feel this way. And so then, it's like, oh, you're discounting your own agency, you're not taking control of your life, you do have control over this, and you are refusing to acknowledge that. And then I got put on a heart medication, and then I was like, I feel better after I'm on this heart medication, and the things that were making me anxious don't make me as anxious anymore. Because my heart rate is not going up over the smallest thing. And then she was like, oh, I see. Okay, I understand. You have these health issues, and you're telling me that, like, I can't do X, Y, Z because my health issues are exacerbated. Yeah, that is actually not within your control, right? Now, I'm gonna have to go into this therapy appointment with this new therapist, telling her that I can't walk, and I can't think, and I can't do. I don't even know what I can't do right now. But there's a lot of things that I can't do, and she's gonna. I don't know if she's gonna believe me, and I don't know what it's gonna mean if she doesn't believe me. Because I have to keep going to therapy in order to receive services. And I can ask for a new therapist. But it was nice, the status quo of having the therapist that I had convinced that, yes, I have a heart condition after I had finally done it. And what we would talk about in our appointments is that, honestly, she wasn't equipped to be a therapist for me. Because she didn't understand chronic illness, right? So how is she going to be somebody that gets it, gets the experience, and is able to actually do any actual therapeutic work with a patient like that? If, that's where we started. And that was fine with me because, like I said, I don't agree with the objectives. So I was able to convince her that we were doing something. And I got to keep my services, and it was great. And I'm just worried that I'm not going to be able to have that with this therapist. I don't really know how to conclude this video because it went off in so many different structured thoughts so this migraine doesn't go away, but you might get more rambles, if you want more rambles on any particular subject, or you think I didn't actually conclude with something that I was talking about. Let me know. Let me know if you think of a suggestion for how the video could be better, because yeah, I didn't really do anything in matcha. I guess another thing that would be appreciated is some kind of I don't know, guidance on what to do next in matcha, because like I read the website, it said like, hey, I'm stuck in the beginning, what do I do? And it said build a campfire and like get grass, but I couldn't pick up any of the grass. I didn't understand, so there's that.